Hey there, surf enthusiasts, and welcome to your Week 11 update. This week we're going to be focusing a lot on surf travel and some of the outcomes of said travel. Speaking of travel, where do ghosts go when they want to go on vacation? Malibu. Malibu. That was a good one. Okay. Um, what you have is a couple of options for things that you can choose from as to what you want to engage in and read and what looks interesting, as well as two mandatories. So we'll take a look at all this stuff together and kind of how to guide your weekly response, and then we'll get you started on your way. This was week 11, and you can see there's quite a bit of stuff, though you don't have to deal with it all. Like last week, you have some choice in what you engage with. There are some predetermined due dates. You have two predetermined readings with questions and, of course, the end of week response. The rest of this, you'll have some choice as to what you engage with and how much of it you want to engage with, and some which will be required. The best way to go about doing this is to look at the actual requirement itself that comes at the end of the week, and that'll lead us to our two. Favorite picture here, that's John Severson typing out an early edition of Surfer Magazine. Sadly, it just closed its doors and is no longer publishing. But in our focus this week, you want to address the core chapter via summative address of subtitled sections. Then you should address your choice of scholarship highlights based on abstracts, and we'll look at those. One work of journalism that does not include, obviously, the two from George, which are required. And your choice of mixed media. And you can handle these in your address or in your weekly response in any order. Let's take a look at your weekly response in general for a way to think about what you want to write about each one of these things, and then we'll look at each one of these things. Under Pages, under Response Paper Examples, if you go to Hunter College's resource page here for writing a reaction or response paper, again, they've given you a nice guide for how to do this. You want to give a summary, and you can do that in a couple of different ways here that they bullet for you. But particularly of interest for you is, okay, now that you've read this thing that I've asked you to read, what am I supposed to write about? Okay, they've given you some focus questions. The ones that are most useful to you are this one. How is the assigned work related to ideas and concerns discussed in the course, right? How is the work related to problems in our present day? And did the work increase your understanding of a particular issue? Did it change your perspective in some way? And last, at this point in the semester, with as much interaction as you guys have in surf and surf culture, certainly this one is okay too. To evaluate the merit of the work, the importance of its points, perhaps its accuracy, its completeness, its organization, and so on. Begin to think with a critical mind. You can make some critiques of these things and probably should. If nothing for else, just personal taste. What we want to try to stay away from maybe is much of this, right? This is interesting, but rather limited in far as transferable skills into other courses or other interactions at the university level. So while it might be a way to sort of introduce one of the things that you read, the better questions are these. And again, you can get to that from the response page paper page and Hunter College's then link. Okay, let's look at the things that you actually have to address as well as your choices. So first, as it says in the response, you must address the chapter. And it says do it in sort of a summative fashion, looking at subtitles. Okay, it's a fairly long chapter, so give yourself some time as you read it. Again, you really don't have to work with it specifically until the end of the week. So be reading it as you move, balancing it against the other things you have to read. But here you have these subtitles. So ideally, what you would like to do is take one of those questions from the reader response and sort of be thinking of it as you read through this section, the next section, and onward to sort of show that you've read the entire thing, okay? Then you would like to move on to scholarship. Each of these papers is from a vetted scholar currently practicing and or studying surfing in its relation to one of a variety of genres and contexts. You've got some from travel and tourism, you've got some from business and marketing, and you've got some from sort of conservation and environmentalist footprint studies. So each of these has an abstract. You only have to choose one. Which one you choose, and by one I mean one scholarly article, which one you choose should depend on what your interest is, because one, you're paying for this credit, and two, you want something that's of connected interest that might be transferable beyond your general education about surfing. You would like something that, is of interest. You're paying for it. So read the abstracts. They're not long. They give you a great idea of what's going to be coming. In fact, that's what they're supposed to do. And then that will then guide you to whether or not, yes, this is the one I want. Each of these has an abstract. Each of them deal with a slightly different angle regarding surfing, tourism, and travel, as well as in some sort of larger way, a meta fashion perhaps, the way that we write about surfing, tourism, and travel, right? The sort of yarns we spin and the lies that we may tell. So you need just one piece of scholarship to react to, right? If you would like and you want to deal with the abstracts of several in lieu of using just one, you can, but then you need 2 to 3 abstracts to equal just one article. I think perhaps the most interesting way and perhaps the most valuable to your money would be to choose just one, but you do have the option. You can deal with several abstracts or one article. Choose them via their abstract. Journalism. Here you have your 2 requirements. Sam George is sort of the preeminent author of surf journalism and one of the godfathers really of surf literature, as he makes one of the very first catalogs of surf literature that existed before Warsaw got the history of surfing and all those that we now see. So you've got 2 from him. You've got Pre-Contact, The Surf Tradition of Sao Tome, and The Lost Boys of Lakey Peak. Both good examples of surf journalism for their style and romanticism and Bildungsroman, but they also sort of beg some questions and are capable of critique based on how George reacts or assumes and kind of what he writes. So I've given you sort of 5 questions here that accompany both of George's readings. Obviously, Sam George is not the only surf journalist, but if he is one of the preeminent ones, then he's going to have a little bit more cultural cachet than perhaps Weisbecker. So you need to do both of these. But then you have your choice of either Taylor's The Spot or Weisbecker's Night at the Cantina. You've already read some from Weisbecker at this point. This might be an interesting read in regards to it's a unembellished true story of his arrival down in Pavones, Costa Rica, which is at the very southern end of Costa Rica, closest to Panama. But he encounters quite a bit of characters there. And this is sort of the account of an expatriate war and squatters' rights war between local native indigenous peoples and sort of the occupying expat Americans with money, buying up land, and kind of the conflict that arises out of that. It's an interesting read. But if you've read enough of him, and honestly, that can happen, at least for myself, then I would recommend Taylor's The Spot. You have to open it in a new window. Comes from the Surfer's Journal, which is sort of like the high glossy, heavy stock, still existing print version of surf journalism. It's sort of the hoity-toity surf journalism, if you will. Kimball Taylor, notable Hawaiian, both in and out of the water, writes this story about sort of the effect of surf travel, and he does it through a first-person narrative. He talks about his own trip to Puerto and the things that he engages in there. So that gives you then These two plus your choice of either Weisbecker or Taylor. Right? You don't have to do them both, just one. Then under mixed media, I've got a variety of things here for you. You've got coverage of protests in Nicaragua and yet the continued effort in surf tourism despite the protests, and kind of how both the tourists and the Americans and expats are interacting with the protests of the native and indigenous and local. Then you've got a reaction here from the New York Times about a place that actually I know pretty well. It's an interesting read in regards to this location here, Santa Teresa. Santa Teresa, this is one of the existing buildings in Santa Teresa. I don't think Fred's Place is still there, but it may be. That's what it looked like 25 years ago when I was there. It looks way different now. Gisele Bundchen has a house there, if that gives you any indication. She and Tom Brady. So they're definitely not staying in the crappy apartment that I stayed in above the, I mean, the roaches in this place, whew, they'll carry you away. At least it was a nice place to stay though, because you were kind of above the sorbet place, and so you got like the smell of ice cream in the morning. That was pretty good. Anyway, that's their review of Santa Teresa. Then you've got a article here from the Surfers Journal, Shimmering Vision. Again, you got to get a new window because they've got these firewalls. Oh, okay. So the Shimmering Vision is out. Don't use that one. They beat me. No free, nothing is free. No free lunches. Then you've got some links here to a variety of things that all deal in elements of localism. The Wolfpack is sort of the now defunct but more contemporary version of Dahui, which by now you've read about and seen. And it's an interview here with one of its heavies, Kamali Alexander. And he kind of talks about what it means to have respect and show aloha on the North Shore, and how to not get your ass beat up by the Wolfpack. All good lessons to know. Then I've given you a link here to the Black Shorts, which is a documentary about Dahui and sort of their take on localism. I've given you a link to a story about the Bra Boys. This is the trailer for the film, but the Bra Boys are a group of locals in Maruba in Australia. Notable is their sort of face of their little brotherhood, who was up for and in jail for murder at one point, or accessory to murder. So that might be interesting to read. They also played a large part in the Cronulla riots, which I happened to be in Australia during, which was kind of scary. And you've got an article here on the Wolfpack from Dahui in the New York Times, or rather a documentary here from the New York Times on the Dahui. So your choice of any one of these, anyone. And that will allow you to complete this. Okay? Moving on. Okay, surf enthusiasts, that's it. You've seen the mandatory assignments and you've seen the choice that you have in reacting for the weekly response. Again, yes, we want to pay attention to things like grammar and mechanics and that sort of stuff, but of prime interest this week is your interest, right? You have enough background reading now between gender studies and a little bit of theory that's applicable at least to surf culture to sort of think in those terms as you interact with texts. You also have the minds and ideas of environmental scientists, a large number of you. So, you know, apply that to some of the things that interest you as you respond. Don't feel like it's an egg hunt for some sort of kernel of knowledge that I'm expecting you to get out of it. Rather, what I want to see is what you do with the things that you're presented. What do you find fascinating, interesting? What connections can you make to it, to other things that we've read? What are you thinking about, right? Okay, I'll let you go with sort of, I guess it's a costume joke, but why did Superman have to flush the toilet? It was his duty. Duty joke. Okay, that's it. Good luck, and email with questions or concerns, and we'll take care of you. See you.